Life is good, weather is bad. Kind of 7 p.m. here.
Oh, so you're near me. Okay, so we are live, guys, by the way. This is just in case that, we say something. Sorry, again to steal the quilt. So, hi everybody, welcome to Citizen Cosmos Citizens Odyssey. Today we have a special mission again today, and this time we're exploring DAO Drops, and we have two guests, pardon me, from DAO Drops. It's Ori and Magenta. Magenta, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. Hi guys, welcome to the show. Could you introduce yourself a little bit for us, please?
Do you want to start this time, Lori?
Yeah, hey everyone. Ori here from DORG and on the DAO Drops team. So I've been working in mechanism design, computational law full-time for almost 7 years and experimenting for a little longer than that, and generally interested in applying all of these cool new tools that we're building in Web3 to interesting real-world problems like peer-to-peer lending, public goods financing, work management, capital formation, some of the stuff that was in, but then also trying to stretch it out a little bit further into the future to touch real people and get creative with the ways that we research how to do that and then build systems that do that.
Magenta?
Let's see. I've been working on DAO Drops as a project manager and contributing to some of the governance and curation design of it. I mostly work with on the ground communities doing public goods projects, so I have a lot of context with multi-stakeholder governance and financial decisions when it comes to real-world resources or distributing grants among a number of projects. How do you prioritize and develop strategy as a group and that kind of thing. So I brought a little bit of that to DAO Drops, and I'm really excited how, it explores algorithmic governance to better refine who has decision-making power with financial resources. So it's been an honor to participate in this project. The first round is coming from the Ethereum Foundation, so it's an honor to work on it.
I'm happy that you guys make the intro in such way because correlates, okay, whatever, correlates, there we go, there's the letter problem there with some of the questions I've prepared. But before we go into them and before we go into like some of high overview kind of things, if you had to elify DAO Drops to somebody who has never heard of the word Ethereum, what would you do?
I would tell the 5-year-old.
Or DAO. Never DAO, never Ethereum. Never. I understand computing.
Yeah,
I'm aware of public goods.
totally.
I'm aware of not DAO or Ethereum. Never heard of it.
Right. So explain it like I'm 5. Hey, young one, do you know how we fund things in the world? Typically, governments give out money and nonprofits and rich people donate money. But what if we could just put the money in a big pot and then let millions of different people decide where the money goes? That's it.
I like it short and cool because I thought it's cool because sometimes when you ask LE5, people go on like I'm myself like that. I have to be honest. I go for 10 hours and I'm thinking, yeah, the span should have been like 30 seconds, right? And it's not. Do you want to add anything, Magenta, or do you agree completely with Ori and that's what you would say as well?
Yeah, that was great. Ori's really good at concise explanations.
So if you don't mind, again, before we're gonna dive in deeper, let's play a little because you guys are good at it already. You started good, so I know that you obviously the DAO Drops and you already mentioned the Ethereum Foundation, and obviously there's the org, right? And all those organizations are kind of advertise straight away when you go on their websites. What you see is decentralized this, decentralized that, decentralized that, and like when I'm sorry, I'm gonna open the notes I made because I want to see that. Give me a second, please. I'm sorry because I want to really ask you what's in here. So, and the things what I saw was there was a lot of like decentralized web, decentralized infrastructure, decentralized applications. I mean, there is a lot of ways to imagine those things, a lot of ways to imagine even Web3. What is Web3? Decentralized infrastructure applications and decentralized, I guess, collecting way of decentralized way of collecting money together for public goods. What does all those things mean for you guys? Um, or for DAO Drops? You can choose to answer from your own perspective or from the perspective of DAO Drops as a common united DAO. Up to you, of course. Thank you.
So I think it's a great question to zoom way out, and I'll try to explain it like I'm 5-ish version, which is that that all of our communication systems have rapidly progressed over the last 80 years and 20 years especially, and we do everything in this networked way. You know, you make different groups and organizations and brands and activities that you do and games that you play. You know, this all happens in this digital world, but the really serious heavy duty systems of the world are still designed on a 16th, 17th century model. So, you know, they're modeled on the factory model, right? The industrial age. So our schools, the way our governments work, the way corporations work, the way taxes work, the way insurance works, the way banks work, it's all built on assumptions from 400, 300 years ago, and including something like public goods funding. You know, it's like very serious. The tax collector comes, takes your money, puts it into the treasury, and then the lawmakers that you elect every 4 years debate how to pass these big bills and yada yada yada. And like none of that's changed really. You know, we just they use PDFs instead of like pieces of paper, and they use C-SPAN and CNN to get the word out instead of magazines and the post mail, right? So the whole everything you bring up, decentralized web, decentralized that, it's like a lot of people are like, what's the point of that? Like, you know, but the point of it is really to like bring those innovations that happen at the top layer in communications and culture down into the lower layers of the stack of civilization, into the way a corporation, into the nature of what a corporation is, which is actually born at the dawn of this era, right? And the constitutional democracies that we're used to, those are all born. These are all things like structures that were born in their modern form in the 17th century. And so now we're just needing to do the total redesign based on the technological revolution that's just happened preceding the 21st century. So that's the high level, like macro geopolitics view I think about.
Hey, man, like, no, seriously, I'm not joking, but Magenta, please go on. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna add that specific to finance and determining what has value. Decentralized systems allow us to diversify who determines what has value, and also like defines what value is. And so with decentralized finance systems, with decentralized governance systems, you get more diversity and have an opportunity to address really out of whack power dynamics with who has access to those kinds of really powerful decisions and distribution authority. So that's one of the other ways, the key things about decentralized technology.
I think in the 5,000 years, there's not been yet, or 10,000 years since we started to create governments or any forms of, well, any forms of third parties who decide for us what is better for us. There's not been yet one case, well, literally, where a person stood up and said, I love my government. I love everything they ever did for me. And I'm so proud of them. I mean, really, there was not in the ancient times, unless he was, of course, beaten with sticks. I can imagine that would probably happen. So I absolutely agree with every word you say there. And do you think that DAOs, in the way they are shaped today, the way that DAOs are, well, just the way they are. I'm not talking about not necessarily the underlying technology of what smart contracts it uses or set of smart contracts. I'm not talking about which network it uses. I'm talking about generally the shape of DAOs today. Are they something that is in any way or form or shape ready to substitute what Ori has mentioned, like those, on the bigger scale? Can we zoom out with those DAOs and already say, hey, use them, the world, be ready to use them?
Yeah, I think that's the short answer is almost, and that's like a vague answer on purpose, because I think the revolution won't happen overnight. Corporations and democratic nation states in the 17th century didn't replace feudal hierarchies and monarchies and noble landowners overnight, right? It's part of like a tectonic shift in the structure of governance and operating system of the society. So, but I think like things move at an exponential pace sometimes in the digital networked world. So I think today, time for experiments. Today is the crazy wacky ideas that like completely fail and bust and everyone laughs at, and also the ones that are kind of like break new ground. And so I wouldn't say like, oh, it's like totally silly and unethical for people to keep using old school bureaucracies. Everyone should just switch to DAOs. I would say everyone should be who's like in those systems, and especially has power in those systems, should be looking at this, experimenting with it, seeing which places it's ready to disrupt. But yeah, not like throwing out entire edifice of what's been built over the last over civilization's history. I could be more specific. That's very vague, but like I think, for example, the few of us that got it started were like had this question about, okay, we're like exactly what you're asking, like DAOs, this is exciting, what can we use this for today? And well, we were like, okay, well, these tools are really difficult to use. You have to like have an exchange on a crypto account, on a crypto exchange, and then you have to download a wallet and back keys. Still have to do most of these things today. It's a bit better, but like back in 2018, we were like, okay, well, the only people who are going to do this are like Web3 enthusiast software developers. So that's why we started a DAO that's for Web3 software developers at that time. And there was like barely any investment at the time in DAO tooling. There's just a few DAO frameworks, and they were all like pretty clunky. But today, like fast forward 4 years, and it's come leaps and bounds. And now we have like new tools and different kinds of DAOs coming out left and right, from the waves of like investment that have come into crypto that have been able to like make the tools better. So today you see DAOs that are trying to solve problems with science, with funding and like citations and like DeSci and funding of like health systems. And you have DAOs for local regeneration projects, and you have DAOs working on buying physical assets, because that infrastructure, the bridging of smart contracts into the legal system, is way more robust now than 4 years ago, 3 years ago. So you have to have like a optimistic but cautious view, I think, to experiment with this stuff, because you have to be realistic with yourself about what can be tried today. So that's what I know Magenta and I are always like scanning the horizon for, like what is possible to do now with this stuff that wasn't possible a year ago. How can we push the envelope on what this stuff is used for and how people imagine?
I would say there are two use cases in particular that seem easier to adopt or switch over DAO structure than a corporate hierarchy or something. Although even within a DAO, it's really helpful to have some forms of overlapping hierarchy or roles. I think a lot of DAOs struggle when they're completely flat and have no exposure to the diversity of types of organization structures that are possible with these setups. But the two types of DAOs that are less to get up and running, I think, are a service DAO like DORG is, where you have a very clear, straightforward business model. You're a collective of freelancers. Like I think a marketing DAO like that would work pretty well. For example, trying to think of other, sets of freelancers kind of banding together. And then oh, sorry, you have a question, go ahead.
I was curious, what do you mean by marketing DAO while you were on it?
Oh yeah, so I know a whole bunch of my friends work in marketing. They're like strategists or content writers or researchers, or they do data science, and they hate it. They like always get assigned to projects or companies that they feel are evil. They have no agency to decide what kind of and while they get paid really well, the work tends to be really repetitive and inspiring. They don't have autonomy to direct where the company goes. And then the stratification of salary in those structures is astronomical, right? Like the people get paid way disproportionate, huge salaries compared to people doing some of the grunt labor, right? In a approach, and with DAOs, you just cut a lot of the overhead expenses, and it allows you to kind of lift up the wage of people who are in the lower layers of that skill bracket.
I don't know which part of the world, of course, you guys based it, and if you don't want to speak about it, no need. But I'm based in currently I'm based in Western Europe. I'm actually, but so more or less, it's like I'm one of those lucky people in the world, right? But I've traveled a lot, and I'm talking about even including the times crypto already not just existed, but was already usable, so to speak. Well, depends. I guess I'm not talking for individuals, but more for masses. I've came to one of the obstacles I'm coming into with this and DAOs, and this is something I want to ask you about, is that especially in places where I actually see the most possibilities for DAOs helping and actually creating something which will solve either some bureaucracy or I don't know, maybe even some monetarily issues, material issues to some extent, even at least, or time issues, efficiency issues. Those are specifically the places where I cannot break through that ice barrier to be able to explain to people. Maybe it's me, of course, but I'm curious, are you guys encountering the same kind of problem, or is it just me?
I work at most of my work is based in a group called Bloom Network that works with mostly like food sovereignty and economics, restorative justice kind of stuff. And what works best there is almost to like technical layer to an extent, find a few that are technically oriented and can learn to use a multi-sig, and onboard other members of their community, help them understand security where they need to, and that kind of thing. But a lot of times you can have a hybrid setup. In some of those cases, people have real world relationships close enough with each other that they can pretty much the governance part in person and just utilize the financial infrastructure of the broader decentralized system, right? And so if that community is producing some kind of public good, the people who are able to connect to the technical systems can like do that on behalf of the community. And then like an intermediary later that's helpful is like media, so like hyper certs that are coming out. I'm less familiar with the tooling in the Cosmos ecosystem, but that kind of hybrid is helpful for some of those, where you're addressing survival oriented kind of use cases.
Ori, what about you? Do you have any advice you would like to share with us in terms of if there are people out there who are trying to reach out to local communities? It sounds like an ending question. It's not, sorry. Who are working and in public goods and having this problem in trying to explain DAOs or trying to get people to participate in that who are not familiar with the technology, of course. What would your advice be there, or advise something of not to do maybe?
Yeah, I've definitely spent a lot of energy on the same problem, and a lot of it did, but good amount of it kind of learning through trial and error. But basically, it's just not relevant to 90% of people, even if they can be on board and believe you about it, just because of these barriers still to the to building with it, to like affecting systems out there in the world with it. But like what I would say, to look for small, simple interventions that you can experiment with and co-design with the community that it affects. So like I think a problem I see a lot is like grand systems cathedral building, where it's like, oh, I just found out about Web3 and DAOs and I'm so excited by it, and I'm gonna like write a 30-page paper about how I'm gonna like impose this system on some problem, and like usually it misses the mark on what the problem actually is. And so I think there's a lot of cool stuff that people have tried as like one-offs, and that's why with DAO Drops also we're doing it as like, this is DAO Drops round one. This isn't like, we didn't write a white paper and claim that we're like solving the world's public goods problems and we've developed this whole sophisticated, complicated algorithm with a token and stuff. We're like, no, we're like, it's a very specific intervention. Like, we've mapped out how it works. We've time boxed the experiment. We're going to measure the results afterwards, report the results, iterate with more funding after that. And so I think the same thing can be done for all types of problems. And I honestly don't see that approach enough in crypto. I think we're kind of infected with Silicon Valley syndrome, you know, like we think everything has to be like grandiose and go raise money and have a vision and have like a $1 trillion total addressable market. And we all know that has a 99% failure rate. And so the only people willing to fund that is venture capitalists who have a model that can accommodate 99% failure. But the flip side of that is that there's pressure to be 100x investment. And so you don't have the room to experiment and prototype and co-design things in an organic way. So anyways, I was just always looking to like alternative ways to fund what you're doing, to take it slow, to get a grant at first, to get like some sort of non-extractive financing. Because there are things that venture capital I think is good for, but like most of the stuff it's being used for in Web3 is actually, it's not the right model. Like for I know a lot of people working on let's say decentralized housing collectives, where they're trying to like pull some sort of capital to buy a land and somehow share rights to it in some sort of token fashion. And it can take like a million different kinds of forms. But I see some people going about it like in an organic way, like let's get like 10 people together, get a loan and and build from there. And then others who are like, okay, here's the pitch deck. I need, you know, $10 million to buy a bunch of properties all at once, and then we're going to be the new WeWork, and we know how that ends. So that's like my like two cents on there.
Absolutely spot on. I agree with the. I've unfortunately I've seen so many, especially in that direction, in the real estate direction. I think I've seen so many experiments since 2015, 16, roughly 16 mainly. Probably 15 is a bit too early, but like 16, 17, 16, there was already some initial ones, and I'm pretty sure that most of the idiotic ICOs or whatever token I lost money on was probably something to do with some crazy scam real estate project that doesn't exist since 2017 for sure. I think one of the main things as well, the problem, sorry, with that is that you are going into an industry and to an area where the people or the mechanisms on the institution that is responsible for all the communications there isn't interested in adopting the technology today. So you can like create whatever you want from, and you said correctly, the correct way to do it is go organic. You start with where the people are prepared to do. And I'm surprised that people don't do that. Absolutely agreed. I have a couple of more, well, it's kind of like a one question. It's two, but they're related. So I'm going to put it together and then go into a bit more into DAO drops after that. But you can already feel free with this question to go deeper into DAO drops on examples. So the question is related to working with foundations and distributions. And again, it's two questions. I'm going to start with the first one, but they're kind of related. So one, I'm curious, as an ecosystem developer, we do a lot of things, including content, infrastructure. And one of the like main things that I've noticed from my perspective is that it's a bit difficult to concentrate for a smaller project to be able to work with foundations. For example, you guys work with the Ethereum Foundation already, and you already mentioned that you received the grant, which is, by the way, fucking congratulations on that. Really, this is very big respect in my opinion. But anyways, so either you work with foundations, or either you work with retail, or either you concentrate. In your opinion, am I what I'm saying doesn't apply or shouldn't, or does it apply to blockchain and DAOs as well? But can DAOs choose to concentrate and get funding from foundations and from retail and from, I don't know, entities, or should they concentrate on one of those and develop that?
Yeah, so in the case of Deorg, we have grown like in a slow, organic way, and in the process have worked with some pretty large NGOs and foundations. But that's largely because we didn't front and center run through the doors being like, we're a DAO. You know, it's more like a DAO is how we choose to govern ourselves, but then we have a legal wrapper that lets us interface smoothly with legacy corporations and nonprofits and government and stuff. So yeah, but in terms of actually doing like a pilot with these kinds of organizations that involves DAOs, I think it's all about finding the right person there that is excited and interested in this on their own. So it's really difficult to come knock on their door and say, hey, there's this thing called, you know, DAOs or Web3, and like it could benefit you in all these ways. What we've seen work is, and this is actually like pretty like not that out there now because so many people know about this. Even if they're not convinced on it, they at least like are familiar with a lot of the value propositions, especially in those worlds, like the white collar kind of, you know, nonprofit NGO foundation world. So anyways, I think what's worked for us is having someone there that, you know, either someone knows their personal contact or who reaches out to you, or you can reach out. And they already are excited because they've already spent the hours reading about this stuff and trying it out. And so these organizations are not monolithic; they're composed of people. And so if you kind of like find the right person, and you know it's all very political in these sorts of organizations, but they can be like an advocate to help you run an experiment in a controlled, contained way with that organization. So this is worked for Deorg, yeah, like I said, several times, and it's been I've been able to like achieve some pretty cool things that way. And I think lots of other people, like I hear all the time about these pilots that like massive organizations are running, and you don't really hear about them because they're massive organizations. They're doing lots of things, and just because they're running an experiment or a pilot doesn't mean the organization is sold on this value prop and is going to like totally convert the way they do things. But definitely there's people at all these places, these big places, that are interested and that would work with people who know what they're talking about, that are experts, that have the technical skills or like the design or kind of operational, you know, skills to get pilots off the ground. So say for anyone, not just, you know, you don't have to have like an established brand to do this. I think it's more so about relationships and doing work, working in public, putting what you do out in the public domain so someone can look, you know, even if it's just a resume, you know, at an individual level, but definitely for an organization, like having work out there, having presence on like social media or a web page that can show what you've done in the past.
Magenta, do you want to add anything? I'm sorry, I'm not asking a question. I was thinking you might want to add something. Or not.
Oh, no. The only other thing in my thought, I think from your initial question is, you know, if you approach one sort of foundation, or, you know, the topic of this podcast being interchain to some extent, you know, how do you pick which ecosystem that you focus on? You know, I think it depends on what your project's goal is and what its strategy is. Like, you might find that placing yourself in one specific ecosystem or chain is like the most aligned infrastructure wise and, you know, philosophy or values alignment way. And then, or you may find that you need to be more flexible because user base is multi-chain or multi-ecosystem, or what you're producing is of value to multiple different types of entities or industries or something. So it's really context specific.
It's interesting. Yeah, I guess my question was more about like when you already work and when you already have it. But I don't want to again go my side. I still want to try go your side. I'm much more interested in what you guys have to say. I'm not that interested, I promise. A little bit. But let's go a little bit more into DAO drops. And the first question I want to ask is about distribution. And I'm gonna again be a little bit general, but I know that, for example, in DAO drops, the voting uses the past on-chain activity or something like that. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong here. Please explain to me how it works specifically. But the question is going to be a bit more general. But of course, I would love you to answer from the perspective of DAO drops. It seems that governance distribution, like the distribution in general, blockchain has solved many, well, trying to solve many problems. Some of them it even attempted at solving, but distribution is definitely not one of those problems, right? I mean, we still yet to see a project with amazing distribution that we can say, oh, definitely there is no poor or rich people here, right? I mean, if that's the goal, of course. But it seems that in terms of governance, and Ethereum has less of a problem with that because of the design, of course. But it seems that it's very hard to get, the right kind of people, token holders using and holding your governance token without having any malicious actors or without having any speculators or without having, I don't know, any parties or actors that by design you didn't want to initially have. So my question is, how do you guys design the voting power? How do you correctly how is there a correct way to distribute voting power? Is there a specific time frame that you need to apply into those designs, or is everything I'm saying just should go back to what Ori was saying, just go with the flow, start where you are, start originally, and organically build up? So, or combine those two things, the organics and the design.
Like in terms of voting power and distribution, one thing we try to avoid that I think is like a problematic design pattern is the concept of a transferable, tradable governance right in the first place. I think that works for some systems, like things that might look like, even in the case of like the, classical corporation that's like gone public, that's problematic. But definitely the more you lean towards something that's oriented towards the public good or towards provision of commons infrastructure, things that, there's not a value capture motive for, it doesn't make sense to have like voting power be tradable. And so, yeah, with what we're building, it's based on past on-chain activity, and that voting right is assigned to specific addresses. And it does it in a way where it doesn't care about identity, because it's as much activity as you've done per address corresponds to how much voting rights you have. And so I think, yeah, the distribution problem is not so much anything related to the inherent nature of blockchains, but it's more so to do with a conflict with the desire of a project to yeah, to have an exit and to orchestrate some sort of like mechanism for value capture, which I think there's like a lot of area for experimentation and how that works. I'm not saying it's either or. Systems that could have like value captures and aligned incentives and not have this potential for capture. I think one good example of this is the concept of like a reputation system that works in parallel with a tradable, transferable token. So I was just talking to someone who has a project where you earn the more you use the system, you earn like the reputation point, which is non-transferable and just corresponds to your voting power there. But then there's the tradable token, which is actually like the utility token that you can use to purchase the service from that system. And that is tradable. That was used to fundraise. and that does have a free floating price. So yeah, I think there's better ways to get the best of both worlds. Of course, in DAO Drops case, we're just focused on one end of the spectrum, which is public goods. But even in both cases, there's better options, I think, that we'll see get more popular as kind of these large scale transferable governance token related projects continue to have problems with aligning incentives and getting voting participation and making good decisions.
And specifically, the parameters of on-chain activity that we pulled for just this first round of DAO drops, like we want to improve this over time. But we pulled 3 data sets that were aggregated by different actors in the ecosystem. One was if people who have deployed smart contracts on Ethereum, all those addresses. One, people who attended DevCon or ETH Denver, those kinds of conferences, they issue a POAP, a participation proof. And then a data set from DeepDAO, which runs analytics on if you've participated in DAOs like voting or hold governance rights, etc. And those are just like a few examples of on-chain activity. There's like a scatter shot of different types of knowledge that you're likely to have in an ecosystem. As a start to like an algorithmic approach to diversify who has the decision-making rights over distributing funds.
It's interesting. No, go on. Sorry, Magenta. I apologize.
Oh, just there's like so many directions that can go after that, right? Like there's so many different types of data that you could pull and refine this sort of thing over time. But that's.
I was just gonna completely agree because recently we started to release our own. But it started with NFTs, but then we did realize that the main use case was it's a very small thing we do, and we only release so far because we have like a few different formats, like I said, for the podcast. And what we do is we decided to basically gift the guests and say, well, those are the future DAO tokens. Yeah, we haven't launched it yet, but this is proof for us that the person technically participated in that, and we see them participating. So we're kind of trying to play around with it as well, and it's exactly what you guys are saying. But I'm going to try to be a little bit devil's advocate with what Ori was saying, just to get a bit deeper into to the subject. You mentioned what I think we can call soul bonded tokens, right? Tokens that are not transferable. I'm curious whether again, I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate here. You said that, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in your opinion it would make more sense that if those kind of governance tokens were non-transferable. But then isn't it kind of a little bit violent, like saying, hey, you're gonna be my governor, and there's nothing you can do about it? Here's like, kind of sounds like the pirate black mark. I mean, being devil's advocate here, but what's your opinion?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the context. To talk abstractly about governance is difficult. We can talk about the example I was giving, where maybe you have a community where the more you stay at the community, or the more you show up to meetings or something, the more governance rights you earn. So yeah, I don't think that's like forcing anyone to do anything. It's just giving the option to participate in something. Just like we have in representative democracies, everyone has the ability to vote for their lawmakers. They don't have to vote though. I guess there are some countries where you have to vote. Learned about that, but at least a lot of you don't have to vote. And obviously, in any system, you were just granted governance abilities. You don't have to vote. And so, but yeah, I think maybe what you're like, oh, why can't they monetize on that? And so I guess that just also depends. So to take another example, DAO Drops, yeah, totally. We'll just drop the right to, I think, 130,000 different addresses. So most of the people are going to have no idea. Like, we're going to try to scream and then spread the word on Twitter and reach out to community organizers. But we're not even going to get a fraction of that full amount to. But that's fine. It's not like they have some sort of like tax liability or legal implications from having the option or the participation in the system. So yeah, I think that would never be a bad thing, even if like large portions of that voting rights don't get utilized. Another example of this is DORG, where it works similarly to what I described, but except for every dollar you earn from working on projects means you also get one reputation point in the system, which is non-transferable, which is soul bound. So in that system, it's kind of dual token, not exactly, but for example, like you get $100, you can do whatever you want with that $100. That's your tradable token, but then you also get 100 rep, and you cannot get rid of that. That is on your address. And so this way, like you can spend your money however you want. You're free to do that. You earned it, but the 100 credits of power you have, it is our right to not allow you to give that away, because we gave it to you because you added value and we trust your judgment because of that. But we don't necessarily trust the judgment of the random person you're gonna like pass it off to, and then the person that they pass it off to, which is I think the problem with token based.
Absolutely. Agenda.
There's Evan, I can't last name, but she's part of Disco. I'll try to find her name for you. She has strong criticisms about soulbound tokens in general. She describes them as STDs in your wallet, like you can't get rid of them. So because people can send you things that are non-transferable and then they're stuck there, right? And there's a lot to that. Like, do you use a different wallet for different ecosystems that you engage with? Can the community slash your rep? Or do they have the rights to remove, if there's a violation of code of conduct or something like that? And then, what happens if someone sends you some kind of token that follows you around in a way that's, I haven't dug into that wormhole yet, but Evan from Disco has really good deep thoughts on all that.
Oh, we should rename soulbound tokens to STDs. I'm sorry. It was great. Sorry, Ori.
We could come up with like a double acronym. It's like soul token.
Soul transfer tokens, soul transfer tokens. There we go. Sorry, nice. You were going to say Oregon. Sorry.
Yeah, I think like an analogous problem we have on the internet is the way that anyone can talk about anyone else with almost no recourse. I could make an anonymous blog today and write some hit piece about somebody that's completely lies. Right, and so that lives on the internet. People could Google that, and basically you could defame somebody, and that's kind of the world we live in. Like the internet has that power, and so there's reputation systems to check that power, right? That have evolved on higher layers. Maybe that like anonymous blog is not going to show up on the first 10 pages of Google because it's got no other credibility. It was just created to talk shit about somebody, but you could imagine the same thing with crypto, right? So it's like, sure, I can like send my STD token to someone's address, which I'm sure all of our wallets have lots of these. It's like you see them all the time, and it's like stuck. I can't get rid of it. But basically, like Etherscan now puts a little warning next to these kinds of tokens. So these are like higher layer things. It's nothing we care about at the blockchain level, but yeah, at higher layers and the UIs that we use, they could have their own curation systems and for surfacing or not surfacing these kinds of things.
And in DAO Drops, the user has to claim their tokens, like they have them available, but we don't like automatically drop them to people.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. I hate when it happens. Could you guys talk a little bit about the first round? What was your highlights, at least? Not like describe the whole round, but what were the highlights for you? And of course, there's already, I think, a question here about the second round. And will there be describe if there's going to be a second round and what plans you have for that? And what did you learn, of course, from making the first round? Like in terms of what was your biggest thing, the discovery? I don't know.
So we're still partway through the first round. I'm not sure how fast this gets published, but in about a week from now, so around March 7th, we'll launch the last part of the round, which is where people who have voting power from their on-chain activity can determine drop their points into which of the projects that they would like to receive a proportion of the funding pool. And it's gone really well so far. The receptivity to generally like the mechanism design and also the UI of the app, which we designed to make look very playful and fun to play, like a little video game. Everyone's been really, really excited about that and excited to see a new retroactive public goods funding mechanism out there because there's still so much room for innovation in that space. I'd say the most challenging part has been actually we have to do KYC of those final projects. And because there's so much system and we're a new project, right? Like, and the way nominations worked is like you could nominate other people. And so sometimes people were hearing from us for the first time, like, hey, you were nominated for this thing. Here's the next steps of the process you need to do. And so the communication and advocacy about this is what the project is, this is where it's coming from. These are some of the real people involved, and we need you to do this very scary legal step has been actually the most challenging thing. So hopefully that gets easier. But overall, it's gone incredibly well. It's been really fun. And yeah, doing a second round, we intend to. It's contingent upon us finding more financial sponsors to put into the pool. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm sure there are more things Ori you have to add.
Yeah, definitely. Being like KYC, that like manual step that needs to be inserted into the circuit because of the world we live in and how that all works. And I'd add that the highlight for me has also just been seeing the positive response we've gotten, because we like had no clue if people would be like, oh, this is this has this flaws and that flaws, or like there's so many experiments going on in the space, so maybe it's like 5 people already did the exact same thing and we had no idea. But basically we're just excited that it was like incredibly positive response. Like people were just like, oh, this is awesome. Which I guess you should expect if you're just announcing on Twitter, hey, we're giving out $250,000. Maybe people won't be upset about that, but like Magenta's saying, there's so much like spam in the space and et cetera, that there's a lot of noise and miscommunication that happens on Twitter. So it was good to see that the message got through with the way it was branded and messaged and the organization involved. And yeah, it makes me really optimistic for how we can iterate on the mechanism design and sponsorship like funding model for future rounds.
Go on, Magenta, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say one of the other highlights is, we haven't yet, as of recording this podcast, loaded the final projects into the UI, but there's such a diversity of types of projects and people or cultures doing them. Whereas sometimes in other projects, it'll be much more confined to a much more specific type of retroactive public good, a specific technical vertical, a specific climate vertical, or something like that. And this is kind of scattershot. So even just as it on our team side, validating the nominations and stuff, I learned about so many projects I had no clue about, and like whole new facets of the ecosystem. So I think that will happen when people read through the submissions. They'll also be exposed to more pockets of the ecosystem than they normally kind of engage with. So I'm excited about that part too.
There is a really actually good question in the chat. I'm going to read it out. What kind of on-chain activity do I need to have voting? What kind of on-chain activity do I need to have to get voting power? And how is voting power assigned? As in, how do I know I will have voting power?
So once that phase begins, which Magenta says about a week from when we're recording this now, people will just be able to sign in, connect their wallet, and it's based on basically mainnet Ethereum activity. So yeah, if you have a wallet, then definitely check in and see how many points you have. And it could be likely that you do if you're active in those different categories we talked about. But just to repeat them, it's having POAPs in your wallet from like IRL Ethereum ecosystem events, a certain whitelist of them, and then participation in DAOs. So for every additional DAO, that would be like another point, and there's an algorithm for that that's in the repo, formula for that. And then lastly, the smart contract deployments. So again, a point assignment per smart contract deployed on mainnet. So I mean, those, it's not like it slices in on a few deep points. If you get some like pretty random fraction of those people with that scoring, that all of their small micro preferences aggregated together will result in like an intelligent for how the money gets allocated, proof of concept for how you can run larger scale, more continuous, and deeply kind of formed scoring algorithms for public goods funding or network goods going forward.
There is one more question here, and thank you, Ori, by the way, for mentioning the second time about what goes into the voting power. I think it's important because some people might join in later and some might not listen to the whole stream. So I wanted to read that question again to make an emphasis on that kind of thing. There is another question here about curiosity of as to how the voting UI going to be looking like. Do you want to answer that, or is that something that people will have to wait another week for, or and then they see for themselves?
Is it okay to give the spoiler alert, Ori? Yeah, so our design team, Colin Spence and Maria Puato, made it to look like it's like a grid of cards, but they're really cute. They're all the like vaporwave pastel colors, like blue, purple, pink, and it has a little, photo of the project and a description, and like a link to their website or something like that if they have one. And then it's the consistent for each card, right? Consistent length. And yeah, it's just a grid, and you can see where you can add plus minus points. And you'll be able to see where to connect your wallet, check if you have points. After the end of the round, if you participated, you can claim a POAP, which we may use in future mechanisms. We're not sure yet, but yeah, it's just a very simple like card grid kind of UI.
Cool. I'm actually looking forward to that because I think simple UIs that look very good is kind of make a lot of the job for you, right? People are instead of, what do I need to click here? And then, guys, has there been anything that you want to add that I didn't ask? That I mean, we spoke about a lot of the philosophical side, a lot about why you're here, why you're doing this, what is DAO Drops, what is the voting power, how to use it, what to expect, where to vote. I'm assuming that's DAOdrops.io, right? That's where the voting. Okay, sorry guys. Of course, there's going to be links to this video if you're watching now this in recording. There's going to be all the links so you can find that. But other than that, we spoke about like quite a few things. I don't know, maybe there is something you want to add, maybe the motivation you have. I mean, you kind of course, mentioned the motivation in the beginning, changing all those structures that are shaped from the 16th, 17th century to something modern. But is there anything else you might want to end as a resume kind of thing? Or something I didn't ask you maybe that you want to mention?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot and pretty in depth actually for only having an hour together. I could just add that this is early. It's really early, not just for DAO Drops, but for this whole space of public goods, mechanism design, and just mechanism design more broadly. So if you have ideas, one, I'd encourage you to like kind of follow the discussion we had and find experimental ways of running them. And if you specifically have ideas that relate to what Magenta and I and the DAO Drops team at DORG are working on, definitely reach out because we want to involve more projects, more data providers, more sponsors, and more builders in orchestrating the next round and really turning this into like an ecosystem-wide institution, like across blockchains, and then applying this outside of the Web3 realm as well. So if you have ideas or think something we did is dumb, then let us know. And you can message us individually, like on Twitter or to the DAO Drops account. And then also we'll be posting a feedback form just about the whole experience once it's all over. and compiling that into a research report. So just be on the lookout for that.
Magenta, any last kind of resume word? No? Yes?
No, I don't have
No?
any more additions. It's been a pleasure to talk with you guys and go deep and specific on the technical parts of the app. We really appreciate the discussion.
Thanks, guys. Let me, before we jump off to finish off, first of all, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for the question, guys. Questions, sorry, guys. And guys, I hope that. Before we jump off, there is some person, and this is a great thing. Because there's a couple of people who are watching it. Not actually a couple, it's quite a few people watching this live. People are asking for your Twitter accounts before we jump off. Because yeah, links to the video, one thing, but what are they? Can you please give them, if it's possible, to the names? Because you can.
We can rattle off all the different Twitter ones account. So we have the DAO Drops account, DAO_drops, DAO _ DROPS, and then you can find DORG at DORG_tech. So that's Dorg Tech. And then myself, Ori, but I'm on Twitter as Ori Shim, so ORISHIM. And then Magenta, I actually see it right in front of me. It's Magenta Seba. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, Magenta. But could you?
The color, and the last name is CEIBA. It's a tree.
Okay. Thanks, guys. And hopefully, if you didn't catch that, please don't get panicking, because the video, well, it'll be on straight away, but the links will take like a day or two to end, all the description and the links. But in case you missed it, you know what? You can even come to us as Citizen Cosmos or whatever, Twitter, Telegram, anywhere you find us, messages, and we'll give you all the connections to the guys in case you don't. But the easiest way to find the guys, just go on DAO Drops, and from then just follow the kind of the rabbit hole. And again, if you get lost, message us or any of the places Ori said, and we will put you in contact with the guys. For the listeners, once again, thank you very much. I'm going to end the stream now, and hopefully see you next time, guys. Bye bye.